Remember when a US passport was a golden ticket? Not anymore. So, what happened to the world's most powerful passport? Let's explore the top 10 countries where Americans are no longer welcome. Global rejection often arrives without warning. In 2025, a quiet shift is underway. Nations that once rolled out the red carpet for Americans are now quietly pulling it back. From stricter visa laws to outright deportations, U.S. citizens are discovering they're uninvited in lands they thought were safe havens. Even allies are putting Americans on shorter leashes, not out of hatred, but out of self-preservation. Economic stress, housing pressure, and political backlash are turning guests into intruders. And here's the scariest part. Many Americans abroad don't even realize they're no longer welcome until they get the call. Number 10. Canada. Canada has long been the calm, clean North Star for Americans seeking peace, healthcare, or a polite neighbor. But in 2025, that welcome is cooling. Visa rejection rates for U.S. applicants have climbed sharply, up 19% since 2022. Public sentiment is hardening. 67% of Canadians now believe immigration levels are too high. Housing prices are surging. Vancouver down, Nova Scotia protests against American buyers, new restrictions on foreign real estate. Canadians worry about losing their homes, their services, and even their identity. It's no longer, sorry, Canada, it's sorry, no. Number 9. Mexico. Mexico once seemed like the perfect escape. Warm beaches, low cost of living, rich culture. But by 2025, 1.6 million Americans live in Mexico, the largest expat group outside the US. Rent has doubled in popular cities like Mexico City and Tulum. The government has tightened enforcement. Visa overstays are being deported at the highest rate since 2005. Tourist zones have seen raids, Airbnb sweeps, and protests. Signs reading "Americans pay double" have gone viral. Gone are the days when you could show up and stay. Mexico's honeymoon is over. Number 8. Germany. Germany, renowned for efficiency and opportunity, has become less accessible. Freelance visas now require German contracts, language skills, and savings. University spots and scholarships are prioritized for EU citizens. Housing markets in Berlin and Frankfurt have surged over 40% since 2020, stirring anti-gentrification backlash. For Americans, Germany's bureaucracy can feel like a wall, rigid, slow, and rules-heavy. Germany isn't closing the door, but it's making it much harder to stay. Number 7. United Kingdom. The special relationship is fraying. Post-Brexit rules now make it expensive and difficult for non-EU, non-Commonwealth nationals, including Americans, to get long-term residency. University tuition is higher, scholarship for non-Europeans have been cut. London rent is £2,500 plus per month for small flats. NHS, once a healthcare dream, is overwhelmed. Cultural differences, privacy, restraint can feel distant. One expat said, "It took me a year to get a neighbor to say hello." The door remains open, but expect a chill. Number 6. Italy. Italy's cinematic dream comes with red tape in 2025. New higher financial thresholds and limited elective residence visas. Towns like Florence and Rome are pushing back against Airbnb, tourism, and foreign home buying. Bureaucracy is glacial. Italian language is essential. Living like in a postcard is no longer a leap of romance. It's a calculated risk. Number 5. China. China's transition is dramatic. Diplomatic tensions with the U.S. have ramped up visa restrictions and employment scrutiny. Expats report being watched or questioned. Visa renewals deny without explanation. COVID lockdowns leave psychological scars. VPNs are still needed for basic connectivity. Employment is now heavily favoring local hires. China isn't closed, but caution is mandatory.
Number 4. Cuba. Cuba remains one of the most politically complicated destinations for Americans in 2025. After a brief warming of relations during the Obama era, the Trump administration reversed many of the travel and diplomatic policies, restrictions that have only become stricter in recent years. In 2025, the U.S. and Cuban governments maintain a tense, transactional relationship, and the pathway for Americans, especially long-term residents, is narrow and unpredictable. Americans hoping to live in Cuba face visa limitations and must often renew temporary stays through bureaucratic channels that move slowly and arbitrarily. Property ownership is another sticking point. While foreigners are allowed to lease or inherit property under specific conditions, Americans find themselves navigating a legal gray zone where rights can be revoked or disputed by the state. Surveillance is a quiet constant. The Cuban government monitors foreigners closely, especially those from the United States. Email, movement, and even casual conversations can be observed or recorded. Everyday life poses its own challenges. Fuel is often rationed. Pharmacies lack basic medicine. Grocery stores routinely run out of staples like flour, milk, or even toilet paper. The internet remains heavily restricted, expensive, and frequently disconnected. Yet some Americans choose to stay, often retired couples, independent artists, or digital nomads seeking slower living and a deep sense of community. But even they must live with one foot in the present and one in political purgatory. Life in Cuba is no longer about escape. It's about endurance and awareness. One wrong move, and that romantic Caribbean dream dissolves into reality. Number 3. Turkey. Once a favored destination for teachers, digital nomads, and globetrotters seeking the crossroad between Europe and Asia, Turkey in 2025 is entering a period of quiet exclusion. Visa approvals and residency renewals for Americans have dropped sharply, often delayed without explanation or rejected outright. Political strain between Washington and Ankara, rooted in military tensions, NATO disagreements, and Turkey's growing ties with nations like Russia and Iran, has led to a diplomatic cooling. Turkish nationalism has surged in recent years. Government rhetoric has become increasingly anti-Western, and Americans, once welcomed for tourism and teaching roles, are now viewed with growing suspicion. Teachers and NGO workers, especially in sensitive areas like journalism, education, or humanitarian aid, have found themselves questioned by authorities, removed from roles with little warning, or even blacklisted quietly from re-entry. Media freedom has shrunk dramatically. Journalists who are American citizens risk being seen as agents of foreign influence, making it difficult, if not dangerous, to do objective work. Turkey's door is still technically open, but the threshold is increasingly unstable. What was once a place of opportunity is now a land of conditional tolerance. Number 2. Venezuela. For most Americans, Venezuela isn't on the map for relocation, but for those who go, or stay, the reality in 2025 is both harrowing and deeply personal. The country is still locked in a state of hyperinflation, with the Venezuelan bolivar nearly worthless. Electricity blackouts are routine, lasting hours or even days in many regions. Gasoline, once abundant, is now a luxury. Food insecurity is rampant, and hospitals lack even basic supplies like gloves and antibiotics. The U.S. has no formal diplomatic relations with Venezuela's current regime, and the American embassy in Caracas has been closed for years. This means no consular protection, no passport services, and no safety net for Americans in crisis. Visa renewals are nearly impossible. Government suspicion of American citizens is intense, fueled by years of propaganda blaming the U.S. for the country's collapse. And yet, some Americans remain. Oil executives bound by contracts, aid workers risking personal safety to support civilians, dual nationals with family ties they cannot break. But every day in Venezuela is a high-wire act. You're not just navigating an economy, you're navigating a failing state. And in that state, being American is not an advantage, it's a liability. Number 1. North Korea. And at the top of the list, a place where Americans are not just unwelcome, they're forbidden.
Since the death of Otto Warmbier in 2017, an American college student detained and ultimately killed following a brief visit, U.S. travel to North Korea has been banned by the American government. The only Americans allowed entry today are high-level diplomats, humanitarian workers, or rare academic guests, and even they are subject to constant surveillance and strict movement controls. Every phone call, internet connection, and in-person interaction is monitored by state minders. Photography, movement between cities, and even conversations with locals are tightly controlled. The penalty for breaking rules: detention, forced confessions, and political leverage against the United States. There is no embassy, no safe haven, and no way out without North Korea's approval. In North Korea, your U.S. passport doesn't carry protection. It's a target, a silent reminder of a nation the regime both fears and despises.